Hi, in this clip we're going to be talking about the default meeting settings in Zoom. Right now I'm at my profile page. I get here by clicking my picture in the upper right hand corner, and once I see this menu in the upper left hand corner, I click Settings. And we have here our 5 categories of settings: your schedule meeting default settings, basic in-meeting settings, advanced in-meeting settings, email notifications, and then others. Let's go ahead and begin. This first set of settings in Zoom, the schedule meeting settings, are quite similar to the options you'll be given when you schedule a specific meeting using this link in the upper right-hand corner, the schedule a meeting link. The ones that you're working with in settings are your default settings, and most of these can be overridden when you're setting up your individual meeting under schedule a meeting. So be aware that these under settings are default settings, and you'll have a chance to make these decisions anew whenever you schedule a specific meeting using the schedule a meeting link. With that said, let's get started. Let's go ahead and begin by talking about the settings for scheduling meetings. You want to start with your host video on. You want to start with your participants video off. They will have the option to turn their video on during your meeting, but you as a host have the ability to override that video. So leave yours on and theirs off. You can work with any of these types of audio. At Extension, we tend to work with just computer audio, but you do have the option in Zoom of working with both telephone and computer, or simply telephone. You definitely want to disable join before host. You don't want anybody in the room before you are. It's also a really good idea to disable a personal meeting ID. Having that personal meeting ID out there recurring makes it a lot easier for a Zoom bomber to enter your meeting without permission, and so leaving a personal meeting ID off is good for security reasons. Only authenticated users can join meetings. Good idea to leave this off as well. When it says authenticated users, it's talking about authenticated by Zoom, and it's a fairly high bar to set in that most of your users, or many of your users, are not going to be authenticated by Zoom. If you're certain all your users are authenticated by Zoom, go ahead and turn this on. It is an added layer of security. Similar with this, only authenticated users can join meetings from the web client. Best to keep this off, as it's setting an inordinately high bar for people to enter your Zoom meetings. Requiring a password for instant meetings is less important if you know the folks you're inviting into that instant meeting. If it's a small group of people who you trust, you don't need to require a password for those instant meetings. That said, it wouldn't hurt, and it does add an extra layer of security. Embedding password in the invite link for a one-click join. I think you should leave this on simply because it makes it so much easier for your users to sign into your meeting without going to their email and looking up the password. However, you may turn this off if you want yet another layer of security. So they have to find that password and enter it rather than have it embedded in the link that you're sending them. Require a password for participants joining by phone. Good idea. Again, another layer of security. Meeting participants upon entry. Again, a very good idea. You can give them the option of unmuting themselves during that meeting. You can also choose for them to stay muted during the entire meeting. And finally, if you'd like an upcoming meeting reminder, you can turn that on right here. So those are the schedule a meeting options. Let's move on to basic in-meeting settings. We don't recommend requiring encryption for your third-party endpoints. We recommend turning on chat, but turning off private chat. So this will allow folks to send a message visible to everyone, but will not allow them to send private one-on-one messages to another during your sessions. You can prevent participants from saving chat using this checkbox. If you use this checkbox, however, you're automatically turning off auto-saving chats. Notice that with this on, Zoom does not allow me to turn auto-saving chats on. So leave chat on. You may prevent participants from saving it if you like, and leave private chat off. Playing a sound where participants join or leave is fine. Certainly a good information for you to know as the host. You probably don't need anyone but you to hear that, so I would recommend heard by host only. And recording and playing your own voice allows an added security measure when folks are joining your session by phone. So definitely leave record and play voice on. For file transfer, Definitely leave this off. You don't want folks sending files during your session through the chat pod. You can allow feedback to Zoom and displaying end of meeting experience feedback surveys. I leave these off because I generally have an end of session evaluation for my participants, and I don't want them to be befuddled by having several feedback surveys to go through when they are finishing up our meeting. Co-hosts are really nice to have. If your meetings are large enough, co-hosts can help you with waiting rooms, with answering questions in the chat pod, with screen shares, all sorts of duties. So co-hosts are definitely a good idea, so definitely leave co-hosting on. I also think polling is a really important thing to have in your Zoom sessions. Having a poll at the beginning of a session draws your users in and allows them to be an active participant in the meeting rather than passively listening. Polling also allows you to give an evaluation to your users at the end of your session. Always show the meeting control bar. If you have this off, that meeting control bar will auto hide whenever you're not using it. That's up to you. Having this off will save you a little room in your Zoom session. Having this on will mean you'll always know where that toolbar is. I would not recommend showing Zoom windows during your screen share. This will allow your end users to see any participants panes or chat panes you have on any monitor or window you happen to be sharing using screen share in Zoom. Definitely keep screen sharing on for host only, certainly not for your participants. Only hosts and co-hosts should be allowed to share their screens during your sessions. I would leave this off, disable desktop screen share for users. Essentially, this means that you have the choice in Zoom of sharing a specific application as opposed to your entire desktop or an entire monitor. And oftentimes you want to simply display a monitor, particularly if you're moving from one app to another on that monitor screen. So I would keep this disabled simply to make it a little easier to share during a session. Definitely turn off these next three for security reasons. Have annotation by your users off, whiteboard by your users turned off, and remote control turned off as well. Nonverbal feedback is fine to leave on. I think this now only involves having an applause icon and a thumbs up icon, and that's a nice easy way to get feedback from your audience. Say you want to ask them a quick question and have them click their thumbs up. It's a nice way to easily do a poll of your audience. I can't imagine allowing removed participants to rejoin would be a good idea, so I would leave this off. Allowing participants to remain themselves is nearly always a good idea. Realize an extension, a lot of folks are using the same Zoom account and they might want to rename themselves to their actual name rather than the name of the Zoom account. And finally, hide participant profile views in a meeting I don't think is necessary. It's an extra layer of security if you're worried about folks Zoom bombing your session with a participant profile picture. I don't really think this is necessary, but again, it is an added layer of security. Let's move on to advanced in-meeting settings. Always a good idea to have report participants to Zoom enabled. This allows you to report an unruly participant to Zoom really quickly using the security button on the host toolbar, so you can quickly report a bad actor in your Zoom session to Zoom. Breakout rooms are a wonderful thing to use. You enable them right here. If you want to be able to assign those rooms in advance while you're scheduling the meeting, you can check this checkbox and do it this way. This allows you to upload an Excel sheet that has your room names and the email addresses of your participants and allows you to assign them to their breakout rooms as you're scheduling the meeting and not on the fly during the meeting. Remote support is a good idea to have enabled. It allows the host to, with permission, take over the controls of someone in their meeting and give them remote support. Be aware, however, that remote support and breakout rooms are mutually exclusive. So if I turn on remote support, it automatically turns off my breakout rooms. So if I have breakout rooms on, I need to have remote support turned off. Closed captioning is an excellent idea to have. This is a little similar to language translation, which we discuss in a couple options from here. Closed captioning, all you do is assign someone to do the closed captioning, similarly to how you would for assigning somebody to do language translation, and then they add closed captioning on the fly to your meeting while you're having it. If you're allowing closed captioning, you probably want to have them save captions as well, that you can turn off the ability to have your participants to save their captions. Allowing the option of language interpretation is done right here. I would certainly turn this on, and then you actually implement language interpretation when you're scheduling a specific meeting. This requires you to assign a language translator, have them confirm they'll translate for that meeting, and then you assign them a separate audio channel during your session. This works really well and fairly smoothly. You definitely want far end camera control disabled. This allows another user to take control of your camera during a session. Virtual backgrounds, I would leave on since folks seem to really enjoy this. If you do have a problem with inappropriate backgrounds, you can always go here and turn it off. Identify guest participants in the meeting or webinar is a good idea to just find out which people are authenticated Zoom users and which ones are guests. This is an extra layer of security in that it lets you know right away which folks in your meetings are showing up as guests. We recommend leaving auto answer group in chat off. This allows you to automatically answer any calls made from a specific list of folks on your chat pod. If you have this on, you need to have far end camera control turned on as well. And neither of those seem like a particularly good idea. I would not show just default emails when sending email invites. You want to give them the option of using whatever email program they like. We would not recommend that you use HTML format email. Instead, use plain text. You can certainly allow your users to use stereo audio. You can certainly allow them to use the original sound. This option is useful if they're having problems with the Zoom noise cancellation function, so you can automatically bypass Zoom's own filters and noise cancellation by turning this on, and that the end user have the option to revert to the original sound. That isn't done automatically when you turn that on. We would have select data regions turned off, waiting room turned on if you're using it. We'd recommend all participants rather than guests only, and I have a whole separate tutorial on working with a waiting room. You can customize the card that the end users see when they're put into this waiting room using this option here. You can change the text that shows up here using this editing function. You can change your logo here using this editing function, and then an individual message to your attendees using this function. So this is what they'll see when they enter your waiting room. We recommend allowing the join from your browser link when you're sending out an invitation to a Zoom meeting. This does limit the experience that end user gets, but it allows them to join the meeting from their browser without downloading and installing Zoom as an application on their computer. You can allow live streaming meetings. I have this turned off. If you turn this on, be aware you have to work with third parties like Facebook, Workplace, or YouTube in order to finish that live streaming meeting option. It's fine to be notified when a cloud recording is available, and sending a copy to the person who scheduled the meeting. Also a good idea if someone else is scheduling your meetings. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. When attendees join meeting before the host, I have this turned on. However, you should never have attendees joining the meeting before the host. An email notification when a meeting is canceled is a good idea. When an alternative host is set or removed is a good idea. When someone scheduled a meeting for you is a good idea. And I don't have the cloud recording is going to be permanently deleted from trash notification turned on, but you could if you work a lot from cloud recordings. I tend to work with the local recordings in Zoom. And then finally, if you're working with an iOS machine, you can blur the snapshot on that computer or on that monitor so they can't see what other tasks you've been working on your machine. This changes the language of your email invitations to people attending your Zoom meetings. Schedule privileges. You can allow someone to schedule meetings for you by clicking this plus and then emailing them. They'll have to accept that privilege, and then they'll show up here. And if you accepted this privilege for someone else, their name will show up here. And that, in a nutshell, is how to work with the meeting settings in Zoom.